Hello.
Monday night, Blue Monday. Moving on swiftly, hopefully from Gareth Southgate. Anyway, moving on swiftly.
A fast pass. You're passing the ball quickly, Charles. That's a rarity.
What, you mean unlike England? Let's move to more joyous things, if we may, Graham, because I think we're into the season now of summer sports. So, which brings us actually to one of the major summer events that we always enjoy: the launch of this year's Edinburgh International Film Festival, and more to the point, why it's returning to its strengths. And these are long-established strengths. And it's not that the festival necessarily goes away from them by choice. Sometimes it can be circumstance. But you get a very strong sense that actually the new artistic director of the film festival has looked at what is its best assets, what's its best features, how can we interpret that for a festival in 2024?
He certainly has. Paul Ridd, who's got a great track record with Picture House, Cinema Chain, and also BFI. I mean, he launched the programme for this year's International Film Festival at the Cameo last Wednesday. The Cameo, the great old cinema of Edinburgh.
Exactly.
We're better to hold it whilst the film house is still temporarily closed, ready for a rejig and refurbishment. And by the way, the film house has now just signed a 25-year lease, so it is definitely going to reopen.
Gosh,
but in a different form.
That's even more good news.
Yeah. They're going to change it quite a bit. But if you can't be in the film house, the Cameo's definitely, it's not even second best. The Cameo's fantastic. So to hold the launch there shows you exactly where it's coming from. And the whole programme, although it only lasts 7 days and there's fewer films than used to be, the actual programme has been worked out to represent what was best about Edinburgh when it was very good. So it looks really encouraging.
I mean, we have our long-standing heading north fanatics for this festival, and we've long championed it on a podcast that may be based in Yorkshire, but we always look to highlight outside Yorkshire. And the reason we do that with the Edinburgh International Film Festival is because in many ways it epitomizes what makes a distinctive film festival as good and worthwhile going to as this is. And we know obviously the significance of the London Film Festival, Cannes Film Festival, or whatever, in its own way, the Leeds Film Festival, which has grown. Bradford Film Festival, of course, sadly, that lost out. But here's a film festival that it's natural that it should go in phases of being particularly good and not so good. But I think it's really encouraging that, having actually been given the shockwaves of potentially not, suddenly going, it's found a way to revivify itself.
Yeah, well, the great thing about the Edinburgh National Film Festival, if you had to sum it up, and there's many great things about it, even though its peak, it hasn't been great in recent years, is that it's equally at home with E.T. by Steven Spielberg, which it gave its British film premiere to in 1982 at the Playhouse, because I was there. And also Tarkovsky. It's equally at home with something quite populist, with something obscure and experimental. And it hasn't got any snobbery towards either. All it's got is good taste and the love of cinema. And it doesn't play hardball the bigger film festivals do. It relies purely on its passion and knowledge and tolerance towards cinema in all its forms. And I think that's what Paul Ridd is bringing back.
I like that word, Graham, the lack of snobbery about it. I think that absolutely, there is merit in all forms of filmmaking. There are frustrations in, maybe some frustrations in the big box office blockbusters that infect the modern world each summer. But overall, actually, see, even me saying that as being somewhat snobbish in saying that. So, and you're right, Edinburgh does not take that attitude. It sees the potential in all forms of significant filmmaking. It respects the need for art house filmmaking, but it also acknowledges that you can have some truly staggering film achievements made at the high budget end of it as well. It's the way it assesses this, how it puts the two together, that's significant, how it all marries together, how they all play off each other. And ultimately, you hit on the other crucial word, passion, because that always comes across, I feel, when I'm in Edinburgh. That love of film.
Well, this year's programme, it's got In Conversation with Gaspar Noé, who's an Argentinian experimental film director who's best known for Irreversible, which is that very brutal film about rape and revenge, which was told in reverse. So he's quite an out there film director. So you got him turning up in person.
Mm.
in conversation. And he's also introducing a screening of Dario Argento's classic 1970s Italian horror film Suspiria.
Oh
So
yeah.
you got
Mm.
that on one hand,
Mm.
but then you've
Mm.
got Thelma Schoonmaker, Martin
Mm.
Scorsese's editor for all these years, and
Yes.
she's going to turn up at Edinburgh to introduce Powell and Pressburger's "I Know Where I'm Going," which was
Mm.
released in 1945.
Yeah.
So the whole thing ties together really well, and of course, Powell and Pressburger have a link to the Edinburgh National Film Festival because
Yeah.
Andrew MacDonald, the great film producer, the Scottish film producer, who's
Mm.
on the board now of the new film festival,
Mm.
or
Mm.
the revised version of the film festival.
Yeah.
Well, he is the grandson of Powell, so
Ah,
you know,
right.
so they're bringing all the history.
Yeah.
Edinburgh National Film Festival's deep heritage in the cinema
Yeah.
industry. They're bringing all that back and marrying it to more adventurous film fare,
Mm.
and
Mm.
they're also showing The Untouchables by Brian De Palma. So
Mm.
they're not scared of like taking anything on.
Mm. Is there a retrospective season this time?
No, because it's a mini film festival
Right.
lasting a week, they've got 4 retrospective screenings, but
But
no actual
not an
season.
actual season.
I mean,
No.
their actual total number of films. I think what Paul's done is he's tried to, rather than trying to pretend to be a big film festival, he
Hmm.
said, okay, we need to settle for the moment to be a small film festival, but make
Yeah.
sure everything we do is great. So
Yeah.
there's 37 new feature films, there's 18 world premieres,
Hmm.
there's 4 retrospective screenings, and there's 2 new film prizes, one named after Sean Connery and one
Yeah.
named after Schoonmaker.
Mm.
And the venues as well as the cameo, there's also screenings at the Summerhall Arts Centre, which is a
Yeah.
good place to hold it.
Which is under threat, of course. The
Of course,
Somerville
yeah.
Arts Centre. Yeah.
And then on top of that, they're also, because it's now back in August after its spell in June,
Mm.
he's tying it into the Fringe Festival by
Good.
having some screenings in Fringe venues, including 50 George Square, which I think is Edinburgh University where I went,
Yes.
and
Yes.
also a venue called In Space on Crichton Street, and also Toll Cross Central Hall. So
So
he's,
are
he's
these,
linking the
Graham,
two film
are
festivals.
some of those external screenings, or is it a
No, I think
mixture
they're
there?
indoor. I think they're all
Indoor.
indoor. They're
Right.
just venues you wouldn't normally have the film
Yes.
festival in, which I think is a great idea. I'm not a great fan of outdoor screenings because it's
No.
very hard to get caught up in a movie when it's
Exactly.
100 meters away and you're surrounded by
Yes.
people eating and drinking and chatting. And also it's too light and
Yeah.
I'd rather they show it at unusual venues indoors. And I think
Mm.
that's
Well,
exactly what
that's one
Paul
of
is
the
doing.
appeals of the Aesthetica Short Film Festival in York, that it's not just cinema venues that are used. It's lots of different, both historic and new venues that are in York, that the film festival is shown. And I think that's a wonderful idea again, because York is always known as a city of history, but at the same time, it's always progressing and looking to move to the future too. And one of the ways that you acknowledge the role of history is to live with history, as the old adage that came
Yeah,
about. York
you're
living with
entirely right.
history, and
And
it's a
yeah,
festival that does that.
Aesthetic is a great film festival, but
Mm.
it is deliberately niche. And the great thing about the International Film Festival is
Yeah.
it isn't niche. You know,
No.
it's all cinema as long as
Yeah.
it's interesting and good.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Aesthetica is broadening that scope by having not just the short films, but also longer works as well by directors who may have made their debut at the festival with short films. That's a kind of
Mm,
uh,
mm.
side of the festival that I like that's come in. And it also now has an amazing masterclasses that go on for all forms of significant careers that you can have in the film world. So I take the point that there's a niche element to it, but I think it's a festival that is a really fine example of finding a way to keep fine tuning it and adding things each. And that can be the new venues that they add. It can be the fact that the festival seems to grow longer each year, but also in the scope that it seems to take in as well beyond just a film. It appreciates the significance too of other forms of filmmaking. So it could be the new, the headset filmmaking. It's all those kind of elements. So that's, I think, I mean, not looking to make parallels with Edinburgh, but I think it's the duty of a festival that came in as a brand new festival is to keep finding ways to stay fresh. I think a slightly different challenge from Edinburgh, which Edinburgh I think should always be about quality, about being aware of film history, but also holding world premieres, and combining all those facets in the film festival. Probably, as I say, probably different requirements and different
Well,
aims with
yeah.
festivals.
Well, Edinburgh National Film Festival is in the mainstream, even though it's at the
Yes,
upper end of the mainstream, whereas
yeah.
Aesthetica is deliberately not entirely mainstream, and that's by
True,
choice.
true.
And
Yeah,
since it's
absolutely.
worked really well for so many years
Mm,
now,
mm.
why would they change it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Graham, that's good news on the film front. Now, you were going to just do an interruption on the next topic, which was why you genuinely don't like tribute bands. And I think we'll go in with the feelings on that, and then we'll, if we may, broaden it out to the fact that I went to a show last week expressly built around tribute bands. So, tell me first of all your vehement hatred of tribute acts. Why?
I actually like covers bands. When you go and see a covers band, they do famous songs that you mostly recognize, and you
Yes.
enjoy yourself, and you don't take it too seriously. And when
No.
you hear a covers band cover a famous song, you don't judge it by the famous song too harshly because you know it's not that band. It's not
No.
that singer. They're not the originals. They're not trying to be the originals. They're just
No.
the band or a singer, playing their own version of a famous song to entertain people. And you go, great, I'm having a good time. Go to a tribute band. They're dressed like the original band. They're singing like the original band. They're trying to play all the notes like the original band. And if they're very good, your next thought is they're very good, but oh, they're not the real thing. And if they're
Mm.
not very good, your next thought is, oh, I'd rather see the real thing. So the default way of thinking with me in tribute bands every time is I'd rather see the real thing, or I'd rather see a covers band who are not pretending to be the real thing. So I just can't do it. I try to like covers bands, tribute bands, but
Mm.
I always end up unsatisfied
So
and
even
getting
with bootleg Beatles or counterfeit Stones, you feel that,
yeah,
or
yeah. It's because
Australian Pink Floyd, yeah,
they just can't win with me.
mm.
Even Australian Pink Floyd. The only thing I liked about Australian Pink Floyd is they played Pink Floyd songs I'd never ever seen live before.
Yeah,
So to
yeah.
hear a song I never heard live before was interesting. But yeah, that could have done without a didgeridoo. And the other
I
thing
mean,
is that
you can have covers bands obviously playing at weddings. That's the kind of familiar
yeah,
role for covers bands.
yeah.
And
If you
so
put it
you
this
can
way,
get something like you can get something like the New York Brass Band in York who go around. There's even different versions of that band. I mean, they all go and play Glastonbury, but they'll also play weddings, and they make for a fantastic night's and fun at a wedding. So I think there's merit in a show like that.
well, yeah, and also if you go to see a covers band, say you're at a wedding in some covers bands doing "Addicted to Love" by
Yeah,
Robert Palm.
yeah.
It's a bit cheesy, but it's quite funny and enjoyable. Can you imagine going to see a Robert Palmer tribute band who looked and dressed like Robert Palmer and his band do an exact
And there's
copy
girls in the
of addict,
background. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, of Addicted to Love? It'd just be horrible. So it's just I don't like fake. I'm not a fake fan. But the Harrogate Fake Festival took place
Was
on the
that the name of
spring.
the tribute act? Fake that. I'm sure there must be.
There is, I think there is, yeah.
Yeah, it's got
Well,
it, isn't
on
it?
Saturday, last Saturday, you had the Harrogate Fake Festival in the Stray, which was sold out in advance. It's been coming for about 10 years. It's really
Yeah.
popular. I've been a couple of times,
Mm.
and it's a great event if you like that sort of thing. And they had a fake Foo Fighters and a fake Killers and a fake Blondie. But I'd rather have bands.
Blandy.
Yeah, it wasn't called that, but there's so many Blondie tribute bands. I'd rather have a band like Nearly Dan who do Steely Dan songs, but don't try and be Steely Dan. I'd rather see Hajira, the Johnny Mitchell band, who do
Yeah,
Johnny Mitchell songs, but don't try and be Johnny Mitchell. I
yeah,
get more entertainment from that.
sure. Hasty Dixie doing originally they were just doing their AC/DC covers, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
In a blue, I'm about to say green grass, but of course that was it was from a TV show in a bluegrass style. Yes.
Well, that's a bit different. They're doing something different. They're not trying to be the
Well, that's
original.
what I wondered. You see, if you take it in that direction, where you change the way a song is done, so it's a cover, but it's bringing something new to it. Is there more merit in that in your eyes?
Well, there is, unless, of course, you had a reggae version of Genesis. That could be a bit poor.
I don't think I want to think about a reggae version of Genesis, although I'm quite sure that Phil Collins in his solo career probably codified, reggaeified something in his time. Now, it's
why,
interesting
why,
because,
why hasn't there been a thrash metal version of Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd?
of course, there should have been even Darker Side of the Moon. So now I went to a show called, it was called I Am Your Tribute. This is a show by Sarah Louise Young. She, in the past, has done an evening without Kate Bush, which actually is an evening, really, it is an
Mm.
evening with Kate Bush, and that she's there are Kate Bush songs that feature, but it's much more than that. It's about fandom of Kate Bush, and then she did one called Julie Madly Deeply, and I think you can probably guess who that one's about. So that's the Julie Andrews show. And so
Terrific.
what she's then got to look at was she'd never considered herself to be a tribute act in doing those shows. And in the interview I did with her, I absolutely agreed with that point. I don't think they are tribute shows because instead they're telling the story behind why we like such artists as Julie Andrews and Kate Bush. And it draws the audience into contributing to the show in a way that it's interesting to hear their own reasons why they love such a song, etc. And particularly with the Kate Bush show, which I think she's doing at Latitude Festival again. And the I Am Your Tribute she's taking to the Free Fringe in Edinburgh. She'll be there when we're there doing the show. Now, this show has a lot of audience interaction, which involves things like audience suggestions as to songs that they'd like tribute acts to do. And then maybe the audience singing along. And there was a lot of audience participation in the show. There was also unusual things like having someone actually just reading the lyrics and the person next door performing the song in that version. And that was the first. This is only the second preview show of it. So where I thought it was more revealing actually was about her experiences of performing other people's songs. And she said that for all the compliments that she got, just every so often there'd be someone writing to her saying, "You are nothing but a parasite," and that got me.
Really?
And that got me thinking, because Sarah Louise has a fantastic voice in her own right. She's part of the the musical improv group, the Showstoppers. Have you heard of them?
I've heard of them,
yeah. And she's for 15 years that she's been involved with the Showstoppers, and she has a phenomenal singing voice, and she can do any number of impersonations. So as part of the show was a Dolly Parton routine that she just span out in her own way and just improvising in the moment. And so, but when you hear something like being accused of being a parasite, I think it quite troubled her that she was being called something like that, because it's I mean, it's a pretty gross thing to be called, a parasite.
That's a ridiculous remark.
Well, I guess it's sort of suggesting that you have none of the talent of Kate Bush, and you're just living off her music because you're not talented enough in your own right. So I mean, it got her thinking about that, and there were other insults that she's been given over the years as well, she said. And it did get me thinking about this, because I mean, I do get frustrated when I see yet another venue deciding, right, we need to put a show on, and we need to raise a bit of money for something. What's it going to be? And every time it's either Queen or ABBA, and that does my head in. I get absolutely fed up with that, and I don't, and that then I kind of would feel much more tempted to call someone a parasite, because they're just, do we need yet another ABBA act? Do we need yet another act about Queen? Do we? I mean, no, we don't, do we?
Well, no, but it's easy money, isn't it? It's easy.
So you're hitting on the key thing, right? So
Yeah.
that accusation of being a parasite seems to me to make much more sense in that context.
Well, yeah, there's no artistry to being a Queen tribute band or ABBA tribute. It's just a good performance, whereas what you're talking about involves
she's genuinely
some
artistic.
of her own independent singing, independent thinking. It's her show. It's not just copying Kate Bush or Julie Andrews. There's some artistic input from her.
Absolutely. And it was fascinating to hear people talking about why they love Kate Bush. I mean, it was a love-in as a show in some ways, to a remarkable presence that Kate Bush is, or a remarkable absence that she is, since she's sort of disappeared again, as she is wont to do. And it wasn't that she was performing the songs because Kate Bush is not performing the songs. It was she wanted to look at why she's such a significant figure. And I think there's merit in that kind of show. And we get plenty of fringe shows that are like that.
I agree. I mean, Julie Andrews is a cultural figure.
Yeah.
Kate Bush is a cultural figure. They're pretty different, but there's something about them that goes beyond just being singers or entertainers. There's something that it says about Britain, about both of them.
I mean, this latest show, obviously, that she said, it occasionally goes into the darker side, and I think that was with reference to the bit suddenly where she mentions about being called a parasite, etc. The rest of the show, it's pretty joyful. It does require a lot of audience interaction. It does require a lot of singing along. It requires people to dress up and play well. For example, to put on a David Bowie wig and then do a Bowie performance. Likewise, putting on glasses and becoming a member of the Proclaimers, and So it does need the audience to be fully up for it. Now, I think at the Edinburgh Fringe, an
So it
audience
sounds like they have to be
usually
fully tanked
is.
up for it.
Well, I think there is an element that might help as well. It's one of those shows I can absolutely see as having fun and
So
games at the
she's
Edinburgh Fringe.
she's managed to throw in a little bit of karaoke, just a little sliver of
Yeah.
karaoke there as well.
Yes. Yeah. As well as the fact that she can still sing fantastically well, any number of styles of singing. I think it's a more limited show in its appeal. I think it ended up having versions of songs. It might just be me. I can't stand things like what was Belinda Carlisle's biggest hit? Heaven is a Place on Earth? So the
Yeah,
entire audience
yeah,
singing
yeah,
along with that,
yeah.
I just think I lose again, as with ABBA and Queen acts, I kind of lose the will to live. When Bonnie
You
Tyler's
don't win again, and that's the Bee
Total
Gees.
Eclipse of the Heart, I do not ever, I just can't, So basically, unfortunately, the show had a lot of songs that I can't stand.
Yeah.
Now that might just be me. That might be me being a musical snob, etc. So that to
No,
me
it's
was one
not.
of the
It's just a matter of
limitations.
taste.
But I
Yeah, you
don't
don't have to
exactly,
like big
and I don't
hits.
think she's going to get an audience that's going to be like me, going, I don't like these songs. I
Well,
don't like
I
these
very
songs.
much doubt it, Charles. There are no audiences around like you and me.
But I absolutely loved the Kate Bush show and the Julie Andrews show that she did.
Yeah,
And it's probably just me being a snob and just not liking
it's
certain
not.
songs
It's
that
not.
everyone else likes.
But why isn't there a Husker Du tribute band? Husker Don't.
Husker Don't. Yeah.
Mm.
There's
Never heard of Husker
the
Du
one
tribute
that
band.
Sarah Louise mentioned, and I hadn't heard this title before, was the Arctic Numpties. Not bad.
Yeah, not
Not
bad, not
bad.
bad.
Can you remember any of the names from the Harrogate Festival?
Oh no, I think. Oh no, no, I really can't. I don't really want to, quite frankly.
Tofu Fighters, a kind of vegetarian version. Yeah.
I quite like that. Yeah, that'd be quite good. Wouldn't go down well with the fans though. They want the full meat.
They want meat.
Mm. You didn't go to Foo Fighters for some wishy-washy wiffle waffle, that's for sure.
There's a festival up here, I think near Scarborough, called is their tribute version to Glastonbury. It's called Staxtonbury. Have you heard of that one?
I have heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So even the festival name is a kind of tribute
Yeah, it's
name.
a good name.
Yeah.
Very good name.
So there we go, Graham. That's our reflections, our tributes or lack of tributes to tribute acts, and yet again, my hatred of ABBA and Queen tribute acts has been vented perhaps more to the spleen than necessary. But let's come on to someone who's divided opinions from the very moment she looked rather glum-faced sitting next door to John Lennon in a recording studio. But actually, I think that through the years, the reappraisal of Yoko Ono, she has grown more and more into significance and being more and more appreciated in her own right as a cultural icon, an innovator, and a truly original artist in her own right. And you are, as indeed doing so, in reassessing Yoko Ono via this new retrospective exhibition at Tate Modern in London. So, what's the exhibition title called, and what is its primary role?
Well, it's called Music of the Mind, and everything that Yoko Ono has ever done in her very, very long career has been conceptual, even when it's physical and even when it involves music or films or installations, which are very physical. It's always a concept. She doesn't do just pretty or just dramatic. There's always an idea behind it. And you got the whole story of her life from Japan to New York, then to London, then back to New York. Her life before John Lennon, her life with John Lennon, her life after John Lennon. You got her films, you got her concept art with Fluxus in the 1960s, you got her work with John Cage, you got her happenings, you got her drawings, you got her music albums, you got her concrete poetry, you got the whole lot. And to see the whole lot in many rooms, in big rooms in Tate Modern, and go from era to era, style of art to style of art, new idea to new idea, it was hugely impressive. Even when you didn't like or love every single individual exhibit, it added up to a monumental piece of work. And I was never a born Yoko Ono fan, although I am one of the few people in Britain who owns 5 Yoko Ono albums, probably kind of 0.001%.
Yeah, most have put the O into Ono, I think, when it comes to how many they own, but still.
When you go through the whole thing, it just makes you realize that she truly is a great artist, and there's also there's a sense of humor here the whole time. There's also
that's interesting to hear, because I went to an exhibition of hers. I think from memory it was at Baltic.
I went to see one.
I think it was there.
I remember that.
And you mentioned there the humor, and I think that is the thing that is. I think you have to see the work and realize there's a lot more humor at play here than might be outwardly apparent in the imagery that we always have, which is rather more baleful when we see imagery of Yoko. But there is a playfulness as well as the conceptual artistry and intellect at play in her work, that I think actually the more you see the work, the more that you can appreciate that humor is important to her.
But also on top of that, what really keeps it going, the edge to it, is that she was a feminist from the very beginning
Yes.
and still is in the true sense of the word. And when she
Yeah.
was first famous in New York as part of the Fluxus movement,
Mm.
I mean, it was a male-dominated movement. And at
Mm.
that point, she was doing pieces like Cut Piece and the film Rape, which
Mm.
are about the vulnerability of women
Mm.
to men's gaze and men's physical attention. And
Mm.
at the time, the men around her obviously accepted these as works of art and
Mm.
probably didn't quite get the point that it wasn't about women stripping.
No.
It was about a woman being seen through men's eyes the whole time and
Yeah.
being a sort of prey for men.
Yeah.
And the blokes at the time probably didn't get it, but you can
No.
see it obviously now. She's such a strong, deep feminist. Not she's not a feminist by fashion or by having worked it out intellectually. She's a
Mm.
feminist in her bones. She's worked in a male world for decades, and she's always come out on top. And she's
Do you
always
think?
matched the men stride for stride, if not beaten them.
Yeah. Do you think, Graham, that actually seeing the work now in our uh, more acutely aware age, Me Too movement, any number of films now that more powerfully are addressing these matters, and actually in the world of music making as well, that her work now probably has more resonance than it did at the time, where there may have been some form of shock value before, but actually now, if you take it as you have through the decades, but then you refract it through this decade, that her work is taking on greater significance now.
I think it's because the whole culture and the whole politics and the whole way of seeing life in society has changed since then. But
Yeah,
when she became famous in the 60s and 70s, at that point, the revolution was about unseating right wing power,
yeah,
getting rid of Victorian morality, getting rid of hypocrisy, opening
mm,
up freedom to sexuality
mm,
in drugs.
mm.
And that was almost by necessity led by men because men were the ones who most wanted that to happen. And it was
Yeah,
almost like the feminist revolution was only a sideshow to the main revolution going.
mm,
And now that that is all gone and all those aims have been achieved,
mm,
what we're left with is a world where sex and race are left as the
mm,
two things where the revolution wasn't achieved,
yeah,
which makes them both more central to everybody's thinking. And you can
mm,
see now that Yoko was right all along from the very beginning
mm,
in a
mm,
way that people at the time didn't because they were obsessed with a different revolution.
mm. That's an interesting thought, Graham, that actually, in terms of revolution, where it's still ongoing and unsettled and hugely still in need of further progress, would be the world of sexual politics and would be the world of racial politics. That this is, I mean, they're in the public face, both of those issues, a lot, but are they slower to change than they should be? I mean, is that a statement of the obvious by me? That these things are still the tectonic plates of both of those. And indeed, actually, if one now looks at what seems to be suggested about the rise of the right wing amongst young men, seems to me to suggest that actually this sexual revolution and freedom for women, etc., is potentially going into a more threatened place for them. Problems over whether abortion can be allowed, etc., etc., and males wanting to reimpose being in charge, and
I think
that's
the
the
problem
context
is
that the Sunday Times one article last Sunday, not the Sunday just gone, the one before, alarmingly pushing very strongly this sense that this is happening, that the right wing intolerance and putting women back in their place is on the rise.
well, it's a reaction to progress. It's a counter revolution rather than a revolution. And
Mm,
it won't necessarily win. It's got some strength right now, but there's no guarantee that that sort of nonsense is going to win in the long run. And I
mm,
certainly hope it doesn't. But
yeah.
what's really happened uh, is that sex and race now are about equality. And the reason that
Yes.
60s revolution could work is because if you wanted sexual freedom, introduce the pill. That's all you had
Mm,
to do.
yeah.
Manufacture the pill,
Yeah.
make it freely available, sexual
Mm.
revolution, it
Mm.
wasn't about equality. And the
No.
big issues left now, sex and race, are about equality. And
Equality.
the one thing society is most resistant about is equality. That's the one thing that establishment and general society finds hardest to deal with.
And male-dominated society.
That's about equality.
Mm.
So again, it's about equality. Are women and men really equal? That's the question. Are different racial groups really equal? That's a hard thing to deal with. Much
Yeah.
harder than just having sexual liberation or no Victorian morality.
This is a year, interestingly, Graham, where any number of major female music stars have released albums. There's been a glut of albums by significant female artists, but their sales, interestingly, are nowhere near as, apart from Taylor Swift, are nowhere near as strong as one might expect. And it's any number of female artists that have released albums this year. What might we read into that?
Well, I think the album itself doesn't sell as much, full stop.
Yeah.
Album sales by even major artists just aren't the same as they were in the glory days of the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So I don't think it necessarily says anything about society, that one.
No.
But there is one thing I'd like to add about the Yoko Ono exhibition, which
Yeah.
is very much worth going to see, and it runs till September, is that there's one of the most recent pieces is about a migrant boat. It's about refugees.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah.
it's absolutely stunning. It takes a whole room, but you can't go into the room. You could only look at it through an open entrance. And the room itself is a very vibrant, very warm blue. And in the middle of that very vibrant, warm blue is a real large wooden rowing boat, again in the same very vibrant,
Yeah.
almost ethereal blue. And usually when you're making political points about refugees and migrant boats, it's like get hit over the head with a hammer. Here's the
Yes.
message. Bang, you've got the message.
Yeah.
With this piece of work, recent piece of work by Yoko, there isn't apparently any message. It's just a blue boat in a blue room, but it has an immediate emotional effect on you.
Yeah.
And it immediately makes you think of the horrors of being in a migrant boat.
Yeah.
So as a piece of art, it's beautiful to look at. But as a political statement, it's also instantly accessible without being a propaganda. In most political art is propaganda. So it's very impressive.
I mean, that's really well. I mean, to say it's well judged, I mean, it's because it's such a sensitive subject matter, particularly in a week where we know, again, there was at 63 rescued, 4 died because of there was a puncture. I mean, that's the harsh realities of what is happening here. So when you see it in a beautiful form like you do in this exhibition, and yet still you're drawn to the thoughts of that's maybe the hope that people have when they're they're on the blue sea, they're in a beautiful boat or whatever, which is not the norm, obviously. But that's the kind of idealism, and yet we are drawn to thinking about the reality. That's a very powerful way of presenting something, using beauty, and yet at the same time, we're aware of the beastly as well.
Well, what Yoko Ono also does throughout her career, and has done throughout her career, in her many different styles of art, is that she gets the point across in a almost beautiful, serene, quiet Japanese way. She doesn't hit you in the face with it.
No.
She leaves lots of space for you to think, and she doesn't put you off the message by wrapping it in horror. She makes it actually look quietly beautiful, and yet she still gets very strong.
Is that more disturbing, would you say, because of that?
I don't think it's disturbing at all. I think
No.
it's more that she's got a very positive attitude to life.
Mm-hmm.
And even when she's dealing with things that she thinks are terrible or need to be changed, her positivity shines through in the nature of art.
That's that serenity. That's again, I mean, you mentioned the humor earlier, but that very much is in her work as well. That sense of serenity.
Well, most people know her because of like her shrieking on early Yoko Ono
Yes.
albums with John Lennon, and
Yes.
when we used to be in bags together, occasionally riding around in a bag. So that hangover of her more extreme days, which didn't last that long actually.
No, exactly. Exactly.
That hangover of that reputation still lingers a bit.
And yet the artwork would, as you point to, induces a feeling of serenity, a contrast to primal screaming.
Well, yeah, or fun, serenity or fun.
Or fun, yeah. So, Graham, that is running at the Tate Modern until, did you say September?
That's right,
Well, that's an incentive to get to London. Need one of those incentives. Now, we only have 2 minutes, 33 seconds left. I feel that to call it an interruption would be slightly misleading. But let's say it's the last topic, but of a sort of interruption length.
Well, I'd like to start a new topic, but it's going to be too short to deal with it.
Basically, too short, too long.
Well, the topic's too long for the 2 minutes, 33 seconds we've got left. It's
and basically I'm wasting even more of your time now.
Hollywood is failing. That's all right. No, interrupt. I'm always interrupting you. That's totally fine. But Hollywood is failing. Look at their summer program. Look at the films they're bringing out. Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah.
Another
and also, isn't Beverly Hills Cop back for a fourth? Much cop.
Yeah. So you've got like a fantasy superhero film that's been done a million times. Twisters, a remake of Twisters.
Yeah.
Alien Romulus, another Alien, although I like Aliens. The Crow, a remake of The Crow. Despicable Me 4, Beetlejuice. It's just like there's no new ideas.
Running out of ideas.
They don't produce mainstream films now that are outside a limited genre range, and they're losing in the audience.
So where are the great younger directors of a heavyweight nature that are shaping film for the future? Where are they?
Well, yeah, the trouble is they're either in the remaining art house cinema chain and the festival circuit, or they're being streamed by the many major international streaming channels. And the problem with films being streamed, of course, is that if it's quite popular on the streaming channel, who knows it is popular? There's no cultural interaction between the audience and the filmmakers if it's just streamed. So the whole way that films used to operate is changing fundamentally, and the sort of like cultural meeting place for films in terms of affecting the mainstream public is completely disappearing.
Yeah. Well, that's Armageddon right at the end of our session tonight.
Armageddon on 6.
As in our last minute,
should have been more Armageddons, surely. Another Armageddon.
Well, we're about to cut out. What we can confidently say, I think, we'll have more fun at the Edinburgh International Film Festival than watching summer blockbusters. That's it. We're saying good night with that thought. Thanks as ever, Graham. Armageddon has come, and good night.
Let's do the sequel next week.
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub-production.